Hi, this is Pete Thompson. Today we're going to talk a little bit about respirator and respirator usage. These are the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the written respirator program. We're going to talk about why you need a respirator, some of the specific hazards we have at work, what kind of respirator is required, how you can keep yourself safe, where you have to wear the respirator, what to do if the respirator doesn't give you enough protection, and how to use it. OSHA requires that we have a written program. We have a copy of that, and the plant manager can give you access to that. The purpose of the program is to make sure that we protect our lungs from any kind of airborne particulates at work. These contaminants can cause harm to your body. The body has natural defense mechanisms in place, but because of the exposure, we have to use respirators in certain situations. Why do you need a respirator? Basically to protect your lungs from dust and any kind of particulates or chemicals. We've conducted air testing and monitoring over the years, and we have information on what's in the air. Some of the things that in the workplace are dust, silica, and some other metals. Dust, basically, the hazards of dust is it can make it hard to breathe and can damage your lungs. Silica, which is in some of the materials that we handle, can give you something called silicosis, which is a disabling disease that can hurt you. It's exacerbated or made a lot worse if you smoke cigarettes. And then other metals that can damage your lungs or sometimes be poisonous to them. What kind of respirator is required? We use a 3M half-mass cartridge respirator. And we'll talk a little bit about where it's required. But typically that's the respirator that we use. There are other face coverings, dust masks, which is acceptable outside if you're not required to wear a respirator, and it should be NIOSH approved. So you'll see on the respirator it actually says NIOSH approval. The final one that we get to talk about now are the face coverings that we use for COVID-19 protection whenever you can't be at least 6 feet away from another person. How else can you keep yourself safe? Obviously, a respirator should be the last line of defense, so we use some other practices to make sure that we keep our exposure lower. Some of those other practices are what's called engineering controls, and that'd be something like a ventilation or dust collector, or just having an enclosed system so the dust doesn't come out. Also, administrative controls, which is something like limiting access to a certain area so that people aren't in there and being exposed to dust. How else can you keep yourself safe? Some of the things we'll talk about is medical evaluation. So each employee gets a medical evaluation, and you go up to physician to have that. You complete a respirator questionnaire that talks about your lifestyle and your exposure to chemicals. You have a medical exam, and then any other procedures that they may think you need, and also the fit test, which you should make sure you get in order to make sure the respirator fits you properly. Where do you have to wear a respirator? Here's the details on where you have to wear the respirator. At McKees Rocks, you'll see that there's a long list of places: the bagger station, the Sweetco screeners, the roll crusher, the power screener, the Hummer screener, the dryer circuit, the lab jaw crusher, the John Cone system, the railcar conveyor, and the loading conveyor number 1 and number 2. At Newcastle, you need to wear a respirator if you're working around system 1, system 2, the primary circuit, or the briquetter. At Shenley, whenever you're processing lime, you have to wear a respirator, and then any other dusty area, you should wear a respirator. And that's basically going to be based upon what your supervisor says that you should do. So there are times when a respirator is not going to give you enough protection. One of the big ones is if you have facial hair. So if you have more than 1 or 2 days of facial hair growth, it's going to make it so that the respirator doesn't seal against your face and it doesn't protect your lungs. The other thing about that is if you have facial hair and the OSHA inspector comes in, we will get a good fine for that because they know that that's not a safe practice. There's some other places where the respirator doesn't give you enough protection. If the dust level is too high, which is not typically something that we encounter, or if there's a place where there's not enough oxygen, such as in a confined space or other kind of area where there's low oxygen. Again, that's an uncommon thing to happen. You also could have a problem with the respirator when you need to replace the cartridge or the filter. If it's harder, it gets harder to breathe, then that would make the respirator not work as well. If the respirator is dirty, so you need to make sure you clean it daily with warm soapy water. Typically at the end of the day, if you clean it off, then you can let it hang overnight and the next day it should be good. And then if there's any other damage due to cracking or deformations. Some of the things we do when you're using a respirator, you need to make sure that it's working properly. And here's the things to check. On the face piece, just check for any kind of cracks, tears, holes, any kind of excessive dirt. The head straps should basically be elastic and working properly. No breaks, tears, no broken buckles. The valves should work. There shouldn't be any cracks or dirt or damage on those. There's some real lightweight rubber valves that work on the respirator that make sure that it works properly. And then the filters. So if there's any kind of damage to the filter, you should definitely replace those. How do you use a respirator? In order for the respirator to work properly, you have to use it properly, obviously. Here's the basic steps. Your face should be clean. We talked about that. You should clean shaven. You should be in a non-dusty area when you put it on. You put the lower strap on around your neck, fasten the lower strap, put the mask on your face, put the upper strap on your head, and then perform a user seal check, which we'll talk about in the next couple pages. Each time you put the respirator on, you want to make sure it seals properly on your face, so you need to do what's called a seal check. There's two different steps, or parts to the seal check. There's the positive pressure check and the negative pressure check, and you need to do both parts each time you put it on. And once you do it a number of times, it gets pretty simple to do it, and it almost becomes second nature. If you can't pass both of these parts, then the respirator is not quite right, or there's some kind of problem with it, and you should see your supervisor or the plant manager. How do you use a respirator? The seal check step 2 of 3 is the positive pressure check. So basically, in the center of the respirator, there's an exhalation valve. You see where the man's got the hand over it. You remove the cover there if you can remove it. Sometimes you can't remove it. You cover that valve completely with the palm of your hand, and you blow out, exhale gently to inflate it so you feel pressure inside of it. And then it should stay, once you blow out and kind of hold your breath there, it should stay inflated, indicating that there's pressure inside there and there's no leakage. If there's no leakage, then you're good to go. And if there is leakage, then you need to do it again, see what's the problem, and then try it again. The second step is a negative pressure check. And that's going to be done on the 2 filters on either side. And basically what you want to do is you want to cover those openings with the palm of your hand, or you can actually use a rubber glove if you can't get a good seal. And what you want to do is inhale. So now you're doing the opposite thing. You're doing breathing in. And you'll feel the face piece collapse against your face. And then you want to hold your breath for a few seconds, up to 10 seconds, and make sure that the respirator is still tight against your face and that there's no leakage. And again, if there's no leakage, then you're good to go. And if you do have leakage, then you need to check what's wrong with the respirator and try both of those pressure checks again. So that's about it. Remember, the respirator's there not to be a pain in the butt, but just to protect you and to protect your lungs. Make sure you use it properly, you wear it properly, and you fit test it each time you're using it. And if you have any questions, talk to your plant manager, or certainly feel free to reach out to me, Pete Thompson. Thanks.